Leah Sterling should have never walked into that office that night. She should have stayed home, stayed away. But instead, in one devastating moment, she shattered everything she had worked for. Everything. Tell me this isn't happening, please. 5 minutes ago, Leah's world was built on power, money, and fear. But now, the walls are closing in. Dante, the billionaire she thought she knew, had betrayed her. And the woman at the center of it all, Ivy Thompson, the new waitress. But this wasn't just about business, it was about something far worse. What happened next shocked everyone. But we need to rewind to the moment it all started unraveling. That night at a high-profile gala, Leah first saw Ivy. She wasn't just a waitress, she was a threat. But what Leah didn't know was that she was about to lose it all. Before we dive into the chaos, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. If you want to stay ahead of the game and see what happens next, hit subscribe now. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next twist. This wasn't just about a husband and wife. This was about betrayal, power, and the woman who had nothing left to lose. Leah Sterling should have known better. She should have stayed at home, tucked away in the comfort of her penthouse. But instead, she walked into that restaurant, a place she never liked, and in doing so, sealed her fate. The atmosphere inside was thick with luxury, but it was suffocating in a way that made Leah's chest tighten. The clink of glassware echoed in the background, but her attention was focused on one thing: Ivy Thompson, a waitress. But not just any waitress. Ivy had something Leah couldn't put her finger on, something dangerous, something that didn't belong in a place like this. She moved with a grace that could make anyone stop and watch, her presence subtle, but impossible to ignore. The moment she stepped into the room, she felt different. Leah's grip on the edge of her wine glass tightened. Dante, her husband, the man who was always so sure of himself, had no idea what was happening. He'd always been the one in control. But tonight, the balance had shifted. Ivy Thompson had walked in like she owned the place. Leah wanted to look away, but something about Ivy drew her in. It wasn't just her beauty or the way she carried herself. It was the confidence, the kind of confidence that made you feel inferior, even though you were standing on top of the world. She noticed it the moment Ivy turned her head, catching her eye across the room. There was no fear in her gaze, only calm determination, as if Leah was nothing but another obstacle in the way. And that was the moment Leah knew everything was about to change. She wasn't prepared for this. Leah couldn't shake the feeling that Ivy knew more than she should, that Ivy had something on her, something Dante had kept hidden from her for far too long. The moment stretched into eternity, but it was broken by Dante's voice, smooth as always. "Leah, darling, you're looking stunning tonight. Let's enjoy the evening." But Leah didn't hear him. Her eyes never left Ivy. It wasn't until Ivy walked over to their table that Leah realized just how much trouble they were in. Ivy's smile was polite, but there was a certain knowing behind it, something Leah couldn't place, and that smile made Leah's stomach twist in a way she hadn't felt in years. The woman wasn't just a waitress, she was a problem, and Leah Sterling hated problems. Do you think Ivy's about to turn Leah's life upside down? Comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leah's fingers curled around her glass again, but this time it wasn't out of elegance, it was desperation. She couldn't let this woman have power over her, not now, not ever. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Dante kept talking, but Leah wasn't listening. Her mind was a whirlwind of suspicion, jealousy, and anger. Ivy wasn't just a waitress, she was the beginning of something Leah wasn't ready for. But Leah didn't have the luxury of preparing. She had to act, and fast. As the night wore on, Leah realized one terrifying truth: nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The stakes were higher than she ever anticipated, and it all started with Ivy Thompson. The days after that night felt longer, stretched thin like an old sweater unraveling at the seams. Leah couldn't shake the image of Ivy's confident smile, nor could she escape the feeling that Ivy was quietly taking over everything Leah had once held secure. Dante hadn't noticed the change, of course. He never noticed anything that didn't directly involve him. But Leah did, and it ate at her. Ivy had made her presence felt in ways that were impossible to ignore. And now, every time Leah walked into the restaurant, she was there, serving tables with a smile that seemed to say, "I'm the one who belongs here now." Dante, oblivious to the power shift, continued to dote on Leah with empty affection, but Leah felt the distance grow wider with each passing day. It wasn't just Ivy's beauty or charm. It wasn't even the way Dante's eyes lingered a moment longer on Ivy than they ever had on Leah. No, what made it unbearable was the quiet way Ivy belonged in a world Leah had fought so hard to maintain. The subtle confidence that rattled Leah's every move. Leah had spent years building this life, controlling everything around her with precision. The perfect wife, the perfect image, the perfect world. But Ivy was the storm she hadn't seen coming. Tonight they were supposed to be celebrating something. Leah couldn't even remember what. Another successful deal maybe, another anniversary she pretended mattered. But there was only one thing on her mind, Ivy. Dante was speaking, his voice full of that rehearsed charm, but Leah couldn't focus. Not with that picture of Ivy fresh in her mind. Every laugh, every whispered compliment, every flirtation from Dante felt like a betrayal now. He couldn't see it, but Leah felt it. The space between them was no longer just emotional. It was physical. Every time Ivy entered the room, the air seemed to change. Dante, spoken. "I saw Ivy today. She's got such a presence, don't you think?" The words slipped out like ice, cold, precise. And when Dante, unbothered, continued his chatter about business deals and trivial matters, Leah felt her jaw tighten. She wanted to scream, to demand the attention she once had, but instead, she smiled. The plastic expression hanging on her face like a mask that was starting to crack. That night, Leah went home to their lavish penthouse, but it felt more like a cage. Every inch of it screamed with the emptiness of her thoughts. She stared out the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars, and her mind spiraled. In the silence of her thoughts, Leah knew what had to be done. She had to get Ivy out of the equation. No more distractions, no more competition. Leah was the one who belonged at Dante's side, not Ivy. But something inside her shifted then, something darker, more primal. What if she could turn the tables? What if she could use Ivy's own power against her? Leah had always prided herself on being in control. She'd learned to play the game, the delicate dance of power, prestige, and appearances. But now, the game was changing, and Leah didn't like the new rules. The truth was, Leah was afraid. She was afraid of losing everything she had built, of letting Ivy slip into the life she had always thought was hers to command. But that fear, it could be used. She just needed to find the right leverage. Ivy, with all her grace, was still unaware of what was coming. She wasn't playing the same game Leah was. No, Ivy was too innocent for that. But that would make her the perfect pawn. Leah could use Ivy's charm, her naivety, to her advantage. But first, she needed to push the right buttons. Leah walked into the restaurant, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She wasn't here to eat. She wasn't even here for Dante. She was here to talk to Ivy. And when she spoke to Ivy, Leah would make sure it was the last conversation they ever had. Leah stepped forward, a determined look in her eyes. She was ready to play her hand. But what she didn't realize was that Ivy had been waiting for this moment. Do you think Leah's plan will work, or is she digging herself into a deeper hole? Comment below where you're watching from and share your thoughts. If you want to see how this plays out, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next twist. The gala was everything Leah hated about these kinds of events. The music was too loud, the conversations too shallow, and the fake smiles too abundant. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, her eyes scanning the crowd, her mind elsewhere. Tonight was supposed to be about celebrating Dante's latest acquisition, a multi-million-dollar deal he had brokered. But to Leah, it was just another night where she felt invisible. But as she shifted from one foot to the other, waiting for Dante to wrap up his business conversations, her eyes landed on Ivy. Ivy wasn't just working the crowd as the new waitress anymore. Tonight, she was a guest of honor. She glided through the room, effortlessly making small talk with the elite, laughing at their jokes and basking in the attention she commanded. It was that look in her eyes, though. The subtle power Ivy had, the way she owned every room she stepped into without trying. It made Leah's skin crawl. Leah had always been the one who commanded attention. She was the one everyone admired, the beautiful, poised wife of the billionaire. But tonight, Ivy was winning that battle, and Leah wasn't going to let it happen. It wasn't just the way Ivy smiled, the way her voice rang out like music. It was the way people listened to her, the way they were drawn in by her like moths to a flame. They didn't know the real Ivy, Leah thought. They didn't know what she was capable of. But Leah did. Leah, darling, there you are. I was just telling everyone about your latest project. You've been doing such great work. Dante was always the perfect husband when he wanted to be. The charm, the smooth words, the endless compliments. But Leah could tell it was all for show. He was distracted, distant, like his attention had already wandered elsewhere. To Ivy. Leah forced a smile, nodding at his words, but her mind wasn't with him. It was with Ivy, standing across the room, laughing with an ease Leah couldn't understand. Leah couldn't ignore it anymore. She couldn't stand being the woman who always had to play second fiddle to someone younger, someone newer, someone with a fresh, untarnished innocence. Ivy had no idea how much damage she was causing. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling. Leah, you look absolutely stunning tonight." The words were polite, but the tone was laced with something else, a kind of quiet power, the kind that made Leah feel small, insignificant. Ivy's gaze lingered just a moment too long on Dante, and for the first time in years, Leah felt a deep, gut-wrenching jealousy twist inside her. "Thank you, Ivy. It's nice to see you again." There it was again. The quiet, unspoken rivalry. Ivy didn't see it, but Leah felt it. The pull, the undercurrent of something that could tear her apart if she wasn't careful. Leah couldn't just sit there anymore. Not when everything she had fought for was slipping through her fingers. Not when Ivy was taking everything Leah thought was hers. The moment was a blur. Leah wasn't even sure what she was doing. Her feet moved of their own accord, carrying her away from the table, from Dante's indifferent gaze. She needed air. She needed space. She needed control. She wasn't just losing her grip on Dante, she was losing control of her entire life. Leah stood on the balcony, looking out over the glittering skyline of the city. It should have been beautiful, but all she could see was the way Ivy had stolen the spotlight, how she was so effortlessly poised and graceful. Leah had built this life, this perfect, controlled life. Everything was supposed to be hers, the love, the power, the respect, but nothing had prepared her for Ivy. For a woman who threatened everything Leah had worked for without even trying. But now Leah had a plan to put Ivy in her place. The game had changed, and this time, Leah wouldn't be the one who lost. Leah turned from the balcony, her eyes set with a new, dangerous resolve. She was going to take back control. And Ivy was going to regret ever walking into her life. Leah spent the next few days in a haze, unable to escape the thoughts of Ivy. Every moment felt like an endless loop, a game she hadn't been prepared for. But she couldn't ignore it anymore. Ivy wasn't just a distraction. She was a threat. Leah had always prided herself on being in control of every aspect of her life, her marriage, her career, her reputation. But with Ivy around, things were slipping. She couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not when everything was at stake. Leah hadn't been idle. Behind the polished smile and poised demeanor, she was working, investigating, digging. It was what she did best, finding out the secrets people thought they could hide. She'd started with Ivy's background, a string of small leads she could follow, but now, as the pieces fell into place, the picture she was seeing wasn't what she expected. Ivy wasn't just a waitress with a natural charm. She wasn't even just Dante's distraction. No, Ivy was something far more dangerous. The documents Leah was looking at told a different story, one that had the potential to destroy everything Leah had worked for. Leah had always trusted Dante. She had no reason not to, but as she read through the papers, a sickening realization settled in her chest. Ivy had connections to people who weren't just playing the game, they were controlling it. And these connections? They weren't just linked to Dante's business empire, they were linked to everything. Leah had spent years building the empire around Dante's name, and now the very thing she'd been protecting was under attack, not just from outside forces, but from within. The name kept popping up, Joseph Cross, a business partner of Dante's, one whose shadowy connections ran deeper than anyone knew. Ivy wasn't just a bystander. She was entangled in the kind of web that Leah had only heard of in hushed conversations in boardrooms. Ivy was connected to Joseph Cross, and that connection had the potential to destroy everything Leah had spent years building. Leah's world was crumbling before her eyes, and the worst part? She didn't know who she could trust. Dante? No, he was the one who had kept secrets from her for years. And now Ivy? She wasn't just a rival. She was an integral part of something much darker. Leah had to make a choice. She could confront Dante, demand the truth, and risk losing him entirely. Or she could take matters into her own hands and get to the heart of Ivy's game. But Leah wasn't stupid. Confronting Ivy would only make her more dangerous. No, Leah needed to outsmart her, uncover her weaknesses, and then she would strike. Leah couldn't let Ivy take what was hers. It wasn't just about Dante anymore. It was about survival, her survival. But as Leah processed everything she had learned, another unsettling thought crossed her mind. She wasn't the only one with secrets. Dante's betrayal had just scratched the surface. There were deeper, darker forces at play, and Leah wasn't about to let them win. Ivy had shown her hand. Now it was time for Leah to show hers. Leah's mind raced, piecing together a plan. She would play Ivy's game, but she'd do it better. And when the moment came, when the final move was made, Leah would be the one left standing. Ivy wouldn't know what hit her. Leah's fingers trembled as she slid the confidential file back into the drawer, the weight of her discovery settling heavily in her chest. She had known something wasn't right, but the truth? The truth was darker than she could have imagined. Ivy was more than just a threat to her marriage. She was a link to something much more dangerous. And now, Leah was trapped in a web of lies, deceit, and betrayal that she hadn't even begun to untangle. For the first time in years, Leah felt like she was losing control. The silence was suffocating. The weight of everything, her marriage, her empire, and the growing distance between her and Dante, pressed down on her chest. Leah had always been the woman who took charge, who had a plan for everything. But right now, there was no plan. There was only the gnawing fear that her life was slipping through her fingers, and the only way to stop it was to confront the truth. Leah, we need to talk. I know something's been off lately. What's going on? His words felt rehearsed, as if he was speaking to someone he didn't really know. Dante hadn't changed, hadn't noticed the coldness between them. Leah could feel it, a distance she couldn't close no matter how hard she tried. She didn't turn around to face him, not yet. She wasn't ready. I know about Ivy. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Leah's voice wasn't angry, but the calmness only made it more terrifying. Dante froze, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. It was the first real crack in his mask. Leah, please, listen. It's not what you think. Leah had been ready for this moment. She had spent days preparing herself for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. But hearing the words, seeing the panic in Dante's eyes, that was something she hadn't expected. It was almost like a part of him was trying to pull away from her, like he wanted to escape the truth. And for a moment, Leah wondered if she could escape too. No, Dante, I've seen everything. I know about Joseph Cross, about your dealings, about everything you've kept hidden from me. You've been lying to me, to us, for years. Dante took a step forward, but it didn't matter. He couldn't close the distance between them. Not anymore. The distance wasn't just physical, it was emotional, and it was too wide to bridge with a few empty words. I never wanted to hurt you, Leah. You have to understand. I did it to protect you, to protect this life we built. Ivy wasn't supposed to get involved. Leah's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stay calm. Dante's words were just that, words, empty, meaningless words. The truth was out now, and she had to act on it. You've been hiding behind that perfect life for too long. You think I didn't notice? You think I couldn't feel the distance, the lies? Dante had always been the one who held the power in their marriage, the one who controlled everything. But now, Leah saw the cracks, and it was time to break him. I'm sorry, Leah. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But Leah wasn't listening anymore. She had heard enough. She had been silent for far too long, and now she was ready to take control. She wasn't going to be the one who sat back and let everything crumble. She would do what she had always done, take charge. Leah didn't need to hear any more apologies. She had already made her decision. She would expose Dante, expose Ivy, expose everything, and she would do it her way. As Leah pressed send on the message she had written to her lawyer, her phone buzzed with a notification. Ivy had made her move. Leah couldn't sleep that night. Her mind raced, filled with the sting of Dante's betrayal and the weight of what she had just uncovered. The message to her lawyer was sent. The wheels were in motion. But there was something else, something Leah hadn't expected. She had made her choice, but she couldn't do this alone. Not if she wanted to win, not if she wanted to take back what was hers. And so, the unthinkable happened. Leah had always thought of herself as a lone wolf. She didn't need anyone, not family, not friends, not even Dante. But in this game, she had just realized something. Ivy wasn't just a threat. She was an opportunity. Leah wasn't blind to the fact that Ivy had played her part in all of this. But she also knew Ivy was in just as deep as she was. And if she wanted to survive, Leah needed to find a way to turn Ivy into her ally. Ivy had no idea what was coming for her. She was too busy playing the part of the innocent waitress, unaware that her whole life was about to be flipped upside down. Leah walked into the restaurant, her heels clicking sharply on the floor, cutting through the murmur of conversations and clinking glasses. This was no longer just about Dante. This was about power. And Leah wasn't about to give it up without a fight. "Leah, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you." Ivy's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the tension in the air. She had no reason to trust Leah, and Leah knew that. But this wasn't about trust. It was about necessity. Leah wasn't asking for a friend. She was demanding a partner. Leah wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to plead for Ivy's help. That wasn't her style. But she knew how to play the game. She knew how to manipulate the pieces on the board. "I know everything, Ivy. About you, about Dante, about Joseph Cross. And I know that you're just as much a part of this mess as I am." Ivy's expression didn't change, but Leah could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. She had to know. She knew exactly how much danger she was in. "And what do you expect from me, Leah? You're not the only one who's been used here. Dante and Joseph have both played me." Leah could feel the shift. Ivy wasn't completely untouchable. She was just as trapped as Leah, in her own way. And that, Leah realized, was her leverage. "I'm offering you a way out. A chance to get what you want without losing everything. But you have to trust me." Ivy was calculating. Leah could see it, the internal struggle. But Ivy's next words confirmed what Leah had already guessed. "Fine, what's the plan?" Leah couldn't hide the small smile that tugged at the corner of her mouth. She had Ivy right where she wanted her. The game was changing. And now, Ivy was her ally. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. Leah's plan was simple, yet dangerous. She would use Ivy's position as Dante's weakness. She would strike when the time was right. And this time, there would be no mercy. But first, she had to make sure Dante didn't suspect a thing. She couldn't afford to let him see her move before she made it. "Leah, we need to talk." "I've already made my decision, Dante. You don't get to tell me what happens next." Leah was done playing the passive role in her marriage. She wasn't going to sit back and let Dante dictate the terms anymore. He had betrayed her for the last time. As Dante reached for her hand, Leah pulled away, her eyes cold. She was done. This wasn't just about Ivy anymore. This was about reclaiming her power, and nothing would stand in her way. The days that followed were a blur. Leah felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her as she balanced the dangerous alliance with Ivy while keeping up the appearance of the perfect wife to Dante. The subtle tension between them grew, but Leah was too focused on the long game to care. She had to stay one step ahead. It wasn't just about confronting Ivy anymore. It was about seizing control, taking back what was hers, and dismantling the empire that Dante had built on lies and deception. Leah had learned something important in the last few days. This wasn't just a fight for power. It was a fight for survival. Ivy was beginning to trust her, but Leah wasn't sure how far she could push it. The stakes were too high. If Ivy suspected anything, if she realized Leah had her own plans, it could all fall apart. But for now, Ivy was playing along. "We can't waste time. Dante's too distracted right now, but he's still a danger. We need to hit him where it hurts." "Where exactly? What are you thinking?" Leah leaned in, her voice steady and calculated as she laid out the plan. The details had to be precise. She couldn't afford any mistakes. She had already lost so much, she wouldn't lose again. We'll use Cross. He's the key to everything. He's the one Dante trusts most, and yet he's the one who has the most to lose. He'll crack under pressure. I just need to make him think he has a choice. Cross isn't just anyone, Leah. He's dangerous. You sure you want to go this route? Leah took a deep breath, knowing Ivy had a point. But this wasn't about playing it safe. Leah had never been the type to sit back and wait for things to happen. She made things happen. I've made my choice. Dante is too comfortable with his empire, but he doesn't know how fragile it really is. We'll bring Cross into the light, expose him for the fraud he is, and once he's gone, Dante won't have a choice but to fall in line. He'll have no one left. Dante had no idea how easily everything could crumble. He had trusted Cross, relied on him for years, but Leah was about to make sure that trust would be his undoing. Cross's loyalty would be the final blow to Dante's empire. Leah knew the risks, but she also knew the reward. Everything she had worked for, everything she had lost, this was her chance to take it all back. Ivy's involvement wasn't just strategic, it was personal now. She had her own reasons for wanting Dante out of the picture, reasons Leah didn't fully understand, but that didn't matter. They both wanted the same thing, and in this game, that was enough. Leah had never been a woman who relied on anyone. She had built everything on her own, had taken control of her life with a ruthless precision that no one could rival. But now, as the stakes grew higher, she had no choice but to rely on Ivy. Ivy wasn't just a tool in her game. She was part of the plan, and Leah had to make sure that trust was mutual. Cross was everything Dante wasn't, cold, calculating, and willing to do whatever it took to win. But Leah was prepared. She knew how to handle men like him. We both know what's going on, Joseph. You've been playing the game for a long time. But now, the rules are changing. You think you can outplay me? Leah, I'm the one who's been pulling the strings all along. You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. Leah didn't flinch. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here to make sure Cross knew he had a choice, help her or lose everything. I'm not here to play games, Joseph. You've had your fun. Now it's my turn. Leah had made her move. Cross was in her corner, for now. But there was still Dante, and there was still Ivy. She needed to bring them all together for the final act. And once she did, she would destroy everything they had built. The power was hers for the taking, but only if she played her cards right. And Leah always played to win. As Leah walked away from the meeting, her phone buzzed with a message. It was Ivy. The message was simple, but it sent a cold chill through Leah's veins. It's time. Leah's plan was set in motion. Cross was on her side, Ivy was playing her part, and everything was falling into place. But there was one obstacle Leah hadn't fully prepared for, the reunion with Dante. Every calculated move she made, every conversation, every alliance was leading her toward the inevitable confrontation. She had promised herself she would walk away with control. But first, she had to face the man who had been her world for so long. Dante had requested a meeting, one that Leah knew was coming. They needed to talk, he said. There were things he needed to explain. But the truth was, Leah didn't want any more explanations. She had seen enough. She'd heard enough. What Dante didn't realize was that this meeting would be different. This time, Leah was no longer the woman who would listen patiently. She wasn't going to sit quietly and allow him to charm her back into submission. This time, she had the power. Leah, I'm glad you came. I know that things have been strained, but we need to talk. Leah stood there for a moment, letting the weight of the moment sink in. This was the man she had married, the man she had loved. But everything had changed. The man before her wasn't the one she had built a life with. He was a stranger, someone who had deceived her, betrayed her, and thought he could get away with it. We have nothing left to talk about, Dante. Leah, you have to understand, this was never meant to hurt you. It was about protecting us, protecting you. Leah wasn't buying it. She had heard all the excuses before, the same old lines, the same old promises. Leah had moved past that version of their life. But this was different. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about power. And Leah was done being the passive wife who stood by while everything crumbled. You think this is about protection? You think you were protecting me by lying to my face for years? By betraying me with Ivy, with Cross? You don't get to control this anymore. Dante's face twisted with anger. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. Leah had always been the one who kept quiet, who kept the peace, but not anymore. Not now that she knew the truth. You don't understand, Leah. Everything I've done, everything, it's been for us. For our future. Leah's eyes hardened, her grip on the edge of the table tightening. She was done listening to his excuses. She was done being the woman who took the back seat in their marriage. If you really cared about our future, you wouldn't have lied. You wouldn't have put me in this position. I did what I had to do, Leah. I did what was necessary to protect us. You think this is easy for me? To betray the woman I love? To betray you? You think I wanted any of this? Leah stood up slowly, her gaze unwavering. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't the woman who would sit quietly and let the past consume her. This was her moment to take back everything that had been taken from her. You don't get to say you love me. Not after what you've done. Not after everything you've hidden. This ends now. You're right. I've messed up. I've been lying to you. But I didn't want to lose you, Leah. Not like this. But it was too late. The truth was out, and nothing Dante could say would fix the damage. Leah felt something stir within her, an unfamiliar feeling of freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't the woman who was holding on to a crumbling marriage out of fear of what might happen if it all fell apart. She had already let go. And now she was ready to build something new. Leah didn't look back as she walked out of the hotel. She didn't need to. Dante's world, the one he had carefully crafted, was unraveling, and Leah was the one who had set the wheels in motion. She had made her move, and there was no turning back, but as she stepped into the cool night air, her phone buzzed, a message from Ivy. It's time. We make our move tonight. Leah's steps quickened as she walked out of the hotel, the cold night air biting at her skin. She felt a strange sense of calm wash over her, like a storm had passed, leaving only the aftermath of her decision. There was no turning back now. She had broken free from Dante, and with it, she had unlocked something far more powerful than she'd ever imagined. But even as she stepped into her car and drove away, the weight of her choices lingered. Ivy's message still burned in her phone, a reminder that this was only the beginning. Leah knew she needed to act fast. Time was running out. Ivy had been waiting for this moment, the perfect time to strike. And Leah knew that together they could finally take down the empire Dante had built. But there was no room for mistakes. The stakes were higher than ever. She hit send, her message clear and concise. Meet me at the warehouse tomorrow. It's time. Ivy had always been the wild card, the one who played the game her own way. But now, the stakes were too high. She knew the risks. Aligning with Leah wasn't without its consequences. But for the first time, Ivy felt like she had something more than just survival. She had power. As Ivy read Leah's message, a small, satisfied smile crept across her face. She was ready. The warehouse was empty, save for the two women who stood there, their gazes locked in a silent understanding. This was the place where everything would unfold, the place where they would set their trap. Leah felt a quiet thrill pulse through her as she watched Ivy approach. They were about to turn everything on its head, and neither of them could afford to hesitate now. We do this right, and we take everything from them. Cross, Dante, the entire operation. It's all ours for the taking. Leah nodded, her own confidence growing with each word Ivy spoke. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about taking back what was hers, about building a new future, one where she was the one in control. We need to move quickly. Dante is too distracted by his empire, and Cross is already on the edge. I'll make sure Cross has nowhere to turn. The only thing left for Dante to do will be to fall in line. It was a simple plan, but it was dangerous. Dante and Cross had more power than either of them had realized, but with their combined knowledge and determination, Leah and Ivy could destroy everything, and they would do it together. The clock was ticking. Tomorrow, everything would change. Leah had to be ready, and Ivy had to be there too. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the moment she would take back the power that had been ripped away from her. Joseph Cross was everything Leah had imagined. Cold, calculating, dangerous. He had the power to destroy everything she had worked for. But he was also the key to bringing Dante to his knees. And today, Leah wasn't going to let him slip away. We know about you, Cross. We know everything. The shady dealings, the false contracts. We know you've been playing both sides, and we can destroy you with just one word. Cross didn't flinch. His cold stare never wavered, but Leah could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He knew they were serious, but Leah wasn't playing games anymore. She wasn't just threatening him, she was going to make him feel the weight of her power. You think you can bring me down? You and your little friend? You're out of your depth, Leah. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Leah's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. She didn't need to fight him physically. She didn't need to threaten him with violence. No, she had something far more dangerous: the truth. You're right. I don't need to fight you. I just need to expose you. And once the world knows what you've done, once Dante knows you've been working behind his back, you won't have a leg to stand on. No one will trust you, not even Dante. Cross had underestimated her. They both had. Leah's smile was sharp, like a predator's. She wasn't just going to bring him down, she was going to watch him crumble under the pressure of his own lies. And once Cross was out of the picture, Dante would have no choice but to follow her lead. Just as Cross opens his mouth to speak, his phone buzzes, his eyes widen as he reads the message. Leah knows the truth, and so does Ivy. Will Leah succeed in taking down Cross, or will he find a way to fight back? Comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. The stakes are higher than ever. The plan was set, the pieces in place. Leah could feel the anticipation building in her chest. They were on the verge of victory, on the brink of dismantling everything Dante had worked so hard to build. But as much as Leah had prepared for this moment, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. Leah had made her move, and now it was time to watch Cross squirm. He wasn't the powerful figure he thought he was, not now that Leah had uncovered everything he'd been hiding. The smirk that had played on his lips when he entered the room was gone now, replaced by a thin veneer of control that Leah knew wouldn't last. You've done a lot of damage, Cross, to Dante, to me, to everything we've built. And now, it's time for you to pay the price. Cross's hands clenched under the table, but he didn't react. Not yet. His eyes darted between Leah and Ivy, calculating, searching for a way out. But there was no escape now. The walls were closing in. You really think you can take me down with just a few documents? That's cute, Leah, but you're playing a dangerous game, and you're not the only one with secrets. Leah froze, her heart skipping a beat. She knew Cross was dangerous, but she hadn't expected him to strike back so quickly. She looked over at Ivy, who was sitting quietly, watching Cross closely. What are you talking about, Cross? We've got the proof. You're finished. You think you've got everything figured out? You think you've won? Let me show you just how wrong you are. Before Leah could react, Cross reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, tossing it onto the table between them. Leah stared at it, her stomach churning. It was too easy, too clean. It didn't make sense. What's this? Cross leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with malice. You're not the only one who's been playing games. You may have found my secrets, but I've found yours too. This envelope holds the key to destroying both of you. Your dirty little secrets, all of them. Leah's pulse quickened as she slowly opened the envelope. The contents were what she feared most, proof of Ivy's involvement in everything. Cross had been watching them all along. He had orchestrated the game, feeding Leah the information she needed to tear Dante down, only to turn it back on her when she least expected it. This was your plan all along? Cross didn't need to answer. The smirk on his face said everything. He had been pulling the strings. Ivy, too. They were never on the same side. Leah had walked right into a trap, and now she was trapped in a game of deceit she hadn't even realized she was playing. You're lying, Cross. We were going to take Dante down together. You promised me. But Cross didn't care about promises. He cared about power. You've always been the naive one, Ivy, too trusting. You never saw the bigger picture. This was never about taking Dante down. It was about who would be in control when the dust settled. I didn't know. I didn't know it would end like this. Leah could feel the betrayal cutting deeper than anything Dante had ever done. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was personal. Ivy had been playing her, using her, just like everyone else. Leah's world began to collapse in slow motion, the weight of Cross's words sinking into her chest. "You've been working with him all along, haven't you, Ivy? You've been using me. You were never on my side." Ivy looked away, unable to meet Leah's gaze. She had nowhere to hide now. The truth was out, and there was no going back. Leah's heart sank as the realization hit her. She had trusted Ivy, and now Ivy had betrayed her just like everyone else. Cross stood, adjusting his suit jacket with a slow, deliberate motion. "You're finished, Leah, and so is Ivy. It's over." Leah stood there, staring at Cross, her mind racing as his words echoed in her ears. The world around her felt as if it had shattered, the pieces scattering like glass. Ivy, her only ally, wasn't an ally at all. She had been playing her part just like everyone else. Leah had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she hadn't even realized she was playing. But something inside Leah shifted. She wasn't the kind of woman who crumbled under pressure. She was the one who rebuilt. And right now, she was going to take what was left of her world and burn it to the ground if she had to. Ivy hadn't said a word since Cross had exposed her. Leah could see the guilt written all over her face, but Leah wasn't interested in apologies. Not anymore. The truth was clear. Ivy had been a part of Cross's game, and now there was nothing left but the fallout. Leah couldn't waste time. She needed to act fast. Cross was already 3 steps ahead of her, and if she was going to survive this, she needed to catch up. "I gave you a chance, Ivy. You made your choice." "I didn't know, Leah. I swear, I didn't know he was going to—" "Stop! I've heard enough." Leah didn't care about Ivy's excuses. She didn't care about Cross's manipulation. What mattered now was how to take back control, how to win. Leah had one last move to make, one that would shake the foundations of everything Cross had built, and everything Dante had too. It was risky. It was dangerous. But it was the only way. Leah made the call. The one call that would change everything. She needed someone on her side, someone who had the power to flip the game on its head. Cross thought he had won. Dante thought he was untouchable, but Leah had one final card to play, and it was going to change everything. Marcus Reed wasn't someone people crossed easily. He had the kind of power that even Cross and Dante feared. And now, he was Leah's ally. Leah had struck a deal with him. Marcus was going to expose the entire operation, blow it wide open for everyone to see. Cross, Dante, Ivy, they all thought they were playing a game. But Leah was about to change the rules. Leah had become something she never thought she would be, a fighter. A woman who no longer played by the rules, a woman who took control of her destiny. This wasn't just about taking down Dante and Cross anymore. This was about reclaiming her life, her power, and her future. She wasn't just going to survive, she was going to win. The public fallout was swift and unforgiving. Cross was arrested for his role in the crimes, his empire crumbling around him. Dante, too, faced the consequences of his betrayal. His world, built on lies and corruption, had fallen apart. But Leah was finally free. Leah had lost everything to get to this point, but in the end she had gained so much more. The power was hers now, and she was going to use it. Ivy had tried to play the game, but in the end she was a casualty of it. The world was moving forward, and Ivy was left behind. But Leah had won. Leah Sterling had played the game, and now she was the one who controlled the board. Leah has reclaimed her life, but what does the future hold for her? Will she continue her fight for power, or is this the end of the road? Comment below where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe for the next chapter in this epic journey. The story is far from over. The dust had settled. The empire that once belonged to Dante and Cross was now a shell of what it used to be. But for Leah, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of her reign. As she stood in the penthouse, looking out at the city below, Leah knew one thing for certain. This was her world now, and no one was going to take it from her.